The prosecution is one step closer to wrapping its testimony in Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking trial. This week ending with his alleged drug mule taking the stand. His former assistant, Brendan Paul, told the jury stories of using gloves to clean up after what was described as wild king nights at Combs' mansion. Combs is charged with prostitution, racketeering, transportation to engage in prostitution. He has pled not guilty. Trial attorney, legal expert, and friend of the show, Misty Marris, joining us. Misty, always good to see you.
Good morning, Hannah.
Let's dive in. You've been at the courthouse. You've been following this. Combs' former assistant, his name is Brendan Paul. He testified about working long hours for Combs, getting him drugs. How do you think he played into the prosecution's argument that Combs coerced others, including this assistant?
So he seemed to be very much on the same page as other employees that we've heard from with Combs. He's particularly of relevance when it comes to drugs and transporting drugs for Combs, which we know is one of the predicate crimes underlying the RICO case. So one of those predicate crimes, meaning crimes that were committed in furtherance of the criminal enterprise, is drug trafficking and other drug offenses. So that's where his testimony was really very relevant. As far as prosecution is concerned, he got the testimony that was needed for prosecutors on the record. But I will tell you, it became a little bit better for the defense on cross-examination. He testified that he had seen Jane, who is one of the alleged sex trafficking victims, and she always seemed to be a willing participant. He also said he wasn't really a drug mule. He was getting drugs for Combs, but he wasn't this high-level drug trafficker as prosecutors tried to paint him. So at the end of the day, really, and another Hannah, just before I forget, he said that Combs, everything with the freak-offs, he viewed that as Combs' personal time. So that was a big distinction. So he ended up playing very well for the defense at the end of the day.
Paul is one of more than 30 witnesses the prosecution has called over the past several weeks, as you well know. Do you think prosecutors proved what they needed to in order to secure this guilty verdict?
As far as transportation to engage in prostitution, I mean, the prosecutors proved that time and time again. All it requires is showing that state lines were crossed for the purpose in engaging in prostitution activities. No force, fraud, or coercion, nothing's required. So I think that was established very early on in the case. Sex trafficking really relates to that force, fraud, and coercion element. One charge relates to Cassie Ventura, the other to Jane. In my view, Cassie Ventura case is much stronger. Jane text messages undercut a lot of prosecution's case. That one could go either way. Hannah, for me, the RICO, the racketeering, in furtherance of a criminal enterprise, committing crimes, that still is not formulated for me. I still think that's quite a thin case that prosecutors have put on, and I'm not sure if they got there to establish RICO. Soon we'll know. The jury will have it in their hands.
The jury has heard so much testimony. It's been graphic. It's been intense over the last few weeks. What does the defense have to now do, starting next week, to counter that, Misty?
Well, the star of the show in this case, Hannah, obviously the witnesses were very compelling, a lot of salacious testimony, a lot of difficult to hear testimony. But to me, the star has been the electronic record. It's been the text messages that were exchanged contemporaneous, emails, financial records, all of that. So it's a heavy paper case, meaning all of those electronic records are going to be central to the arguments. Now, prosecutors have presented them. The defense is going to use them to try and establish reasonable doubt. But Anna, in my view, what we're seeing from the defense next week, because defense has shortened their case. Originally, they said it'd be 2 weeks. Now they're saying it will likely be 2 days. And witnesses they intend to call are 2 executives from Combs' global lifestyle brand. So this is the music and lifestyle brand executives who worked for all of these companies. Combs was a business mogul. They worked for these companies at the executive levels. This matters because prosecutors are alleging and trying to establish that all of Combs' businesses were actually just fronts for illegal racketeering activity. So in my view, the defense is being really strategic. They're putting on 2 corporate witnesses who are going to talk about the goals of those companies, which were to make money, to create music, to make clothes, to make alcohol. So that is where I think the defense is going to focus on undercutting even further the racketeering charge.
Misty, I have less than a minute, but I want to ask you about Combs being in the courtroom. Reportedly, he's a big presence. He's hugging his defense attorneys. He's looking at the jury. He's looking around the courtroom. He's smiling. What impact might that have on juror? Look, the one thing everyone keeps saying about this man is he's very charismatic.
He's definitely very engaged, Hannah. In fact, he comes in and he does this hard hands. I'm going to try and do it for you, but and sends that to individuals in the courtroom. Look, he's actually been very engaged, especially this week. It almost seems to be that he kind of is feeling that the light is at the end of the tunnel. This trial is almost over, closing arguments likely next Thursday. The jury's noticing. The jury noticing so much that, in fact, the judge had to reprimand the defense team and say, Combs is not permitted to make eye contact with jurors. That's actually not only disruptive, it could be seen as trying to influence the jury. So listen, they're noticing that he's engaged in the process. And it certainly is something that the judge will say you're not supposed to take into consideration. It'll be part of the jury instructions. But I'm sure they're noticing. He's a big star at that defense table, and he's very active.
Misty, very quickly, do you think he'll testify?
No, not a chance.
And you said that from before. He's not going to testify. Misty Marris, you're always incredible. Thank you for breaking down this complicated case. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Hannah.